So welcome to OctoberPDFest. I'm Jonathan Malone-McGrew, the Senior Director of Engagements for Solimar Systems. And joining me is Marianne. Do you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Marianne Rowan, Chief Experience Officer here at Solimar. Thank you so much for joining us today. And joining us also is Miss Pat McGrew. So thank you, Pat, for jumping on.
I'm always delighted to jump in. PDF is one of my favorite topics.
Definitely.
Well, we know we only have a short time with you today, so we're going to jump right into PDF optimization. What we really want to talk about here is how PDF has evolved. We brought Pat in to really talk about everything she's seen over, well, I won't say how many decades, but she's got a lot of expertise. And so Pat, without further ado, I think we should get going on talking about the evolution of PDF and how people can look at optimizing it for better improvements in their environment.
I absolutely agree. So many of you listening have probably been doing PDF as long as I have, and probably Marianne. Jonathan was born into it. In the end, it was created to solve a problem. Today, there are billions of PDF files. Google says 2.2 billion. I think that's low. There are an awful lot of things that create PDF that people don't even think about. And there are archives full of PDF. Just Dropbox has 20 billion, which gives you a pretty good idea of what's going on. If you look at one of the things that's happened with PDF, is it became the standard as governments around the world started to recognize that PDF was safe and could be secured and could be password protected and encrypted. It took on a whole explosive life, because now all of a sudden legal documents and your personal financial exchange could all happen through PDF. So if you look at PDF, it is for you and I as people, as individuals, to share things, but it's also for major corporate entities and governments and global entities to share their information as well. If you think about it, everything we do every day, I would ask everyone, think about the last day that went by in your life where you didn't touch PDF. It was probably a weekend. But even on a weekend, you might have looked up a manual. I did it the other day. Our ice maker died. I was looking on the Home Depot site for the instruction manual for repair, and it's a PDF on the Home Depot site. So it's everywhere. It's got a history.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really great point, Pat. And, we see that definitely at Solimar. And, as we kind of move into our next, there's so many stats right here that I think it's just impressive to see how it's grown. But these two we picked out. And what do you think about these numbers? I mean, since I was little when PDF actually came onto the market, this really surprises me.
Yeah, you and PDF are about the same age. If you go back to when the original work was being done, look, I think these numbers are low. I honestly believe these numbers are low. I don't think that we really have a handle on where all PDF exists. A big change in PDF was its ability to do double byte characters, its ability to render right to left as well as left to right, top to bottom, bottom to top, to handle all the global alphabets. That exploded it even more. And the fact that, smartphones are everywhere and people use smartphones to interchange documents more often than not is PDF. I think these numbers are low.
Well, and that really takes us into, can you talk us through kind of how it's evolved for people who may not have really been around for the whole evolution?
Yeah, so, a lot of PDF Association members have been on the journey for a long time, but I would imagine many of you are new to it as well. And you may have just taken PDF for granted, just assumed it's always been an ISO standard and, it's always been regulated. And in the early days, I think Marianne will agree, it was the Wild West. In the early days, I owned a software company at the time that was involved in print data stream transforms. So we were early into the PDF world, but when we were doing it, it wasn't PDF yet. It was in the early days when it was still sort of display PostScript, designed to move ads between different organizations. It was something that Adobe wasn't really quite sure what to do with. They had this idea that display PostScript would make it easier for advertising agencies to do soft proofing if they could guarantee the color and guarantee the font fidelity. But people like me got into John Warnick's ear and said, we're struggling right now trying to do display AFP and display metacode. This could be really cool. And God bless that man, he helped us. We actually sat at a trade show once in Arizona, and we came back from the keynote presentation, and he was sitting in our booth editing our PDF because he didn't think we were rendering it quite correctly. And you know how it is, you come up to your booth and you go, oh my God, there's somebody playing on our computer. And then we realized who it was, and we all just stopped and went, he can do whatever he likes to our PDF. The thing is that it was an evolution, but up in 93 is when it sort of burst on the scene as PDF. Adobe did a couple things that made a huge difference in my life and in your life. They gave away the Acrobat Reader. They made it possible for anybody to download it for free. You didn't have to buy a program to read a PDF. That put the burden on them to make sure that we could all read the PDF, but over time, it took on a true life of its own. The needs of transactional people were different from the needs of the advertising agencies, and different from mailers, and different from governments, and different from commercial printers. So everybody, all these different constituencies were sort of fighting for what PDF should be. And that's what led to the standard 32000-1 finally became an ISO standard in 2008. It was a global effort. A lot of my friends in a lot of different countries were part of that effort. And I think that it's the thing that has made it possible for us to continue to live a PDF life.
It's really kind of interesting as it's evolved, right, Pat? We're going to switch on to this next screen where we also have a poll we'll take at the end, but so stay tuned for that. But just from my perspective, growing up, there's a lot of people, so I'm about 35, almost 36. There's a lot of people I know 10, 15 years younger than me that know what a PDF is, but they just know it because that's what's after the .pdf.
It's always been there, yeah.
Yeah, and it's so many people interact with this file format around the world. It is quite astonishing at times. So can you talk us through some of this evolution?
These standards that you're seeing on the screen right now, it's not all of them, right? We had to cherry pick because there are so many standards, and they tend to be segment specific and need specific. So, PDF-A, PDF for archiving, that evolved out of this requirement in document management and business forms management to have guaranteed encryption, secure passwords, all these things that used to be considered big IT things could now be embodied in the PDF itself. And that required a standard so that everybody agreed, right? PDFX became the interchange format in graphic arts. So whether you were a brand owner, an agency serving an owner, a designer, here are the rules for how you should create PDF. Now, they get broken a lot, but it's a standard, and the solutions that you buy as a designer or as an agency, they're designed to interact with PDF using this set of rules. And I mean, heck, engineering, we don't talk about PDF-E very much, right? It's not part of our life. But if you're an engineer, if you're a mechanical engineer, an electrical engineer, if you're building water plants, your engineering drawings are likely to be stored and archived in PDF-E. PDF-UA, accessibility has been a huge part of the talk track since the early days of the web, right? So going way, way back. And it was always, how are we going to make sure that somebody can read something, or that their text reader on their browser can read something? And PDF-UA establishes all of that, right? To make sure that we can ensure that everybody, regardless of their ability to read or to hear, can interact with the document. And of course, the PDF Association has been right there every step of the way. And I love the idea of establishing that PDF raster standard, because it's one of those things that kind of got left behind in the early days. And yet, so many of the PDFs that get sent to me as problem PDFs are full page rasters wrapped in PDF. So these are just a few. And so whoever you are in the PDF Association, no matter what market you serve, what industries you serve, make sure you know what your standards are so that you're doing right by the constituents you serve.
And I think that's a perfect segue into our poll, which I'm going to launch as I'm talking. So please do feel free to take the poll. It's anonymous. You don't have to worry about it. We just want to kind of get a sense of how the audience sees PDF in their environments. And something else I just want to point out as we're talking, Pat, is like PDF UA in the United States, at least, I believe is the Library of Congress standard now, because they want to make sure it's accessible.
Yes. They had to, right? I mean, it was the natural thing that was going to happen. And their mission is to make sure that all of these important documents can be read for hundreds and thousands of years to come, right? Their rules and their regulations are why we can look at things that are 200 years old, right? So PDF UA does make perfect sense for them.
All right, well, I know we don't have a lot of time today with everyone because these are short, you know, TED Talk-like sessions. So I'm going to give you just another second here to finish the poll, and then I'm going to cut you off and share the results here. So what I'm seeing on my side, Pat, is a lot of A and UA, and then the E. I was really surprised by PDF E in there. And so from a Solimar perspective, we'd love to have some people send us some E files to test with. That would be amazing, because we have some things we'll talk about later on that. But I was really surprised by that. What about you, Pat, Marianne?
And you know what kills me is PDF VT. Is when that standard was evolving, we had such high hopes for it becoming the lingua franca of the variable data printing environment. And part of it is that PDF became so smart and all of the supporting workflows became so smart that you don't have to have PDF VT. It can make you more, it can help you be more efficient, but it's not a requirement. 18% is kind of sad.
I know we definitely struggled with the adoption with people who can take it through their solutions too. So I think that's been a challenge, but really interesting results there. So Pat, tell us a little bit more as we've got another 4 or 5 minutes here. Tell us more about sort of what's happened though, because as everything evolves, it's not always pretty, right?
So one of the things you have to remember is that PDF requires an emitter, something that produces the PDF, and something that consumes the PDF. And they have to know about each other, or you're not going to be able to read what got produced, right? So the challenge is that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of PDF emitters in the world, and there are an awful lot of PDF consumers as well. The net result is that very often, not only things that directly produce PDF, but things that transform into PDF, out of PDF, maybe back into PDF, they often leave debris behind. And so in any given environment, what you want to do is tighten your workflow up as much as you can to eliminate as many of those transform pieces as you can. But the other thing is that you have to realize that these things are just going to be there. So you're going to want to find ways to make sure that after you've done all the ins and outs that you need to do to meet your approval process requirements and your design requirements and your pre-press requirements, that you do something to handle the debris. Right? That you do something that's going to allow you to see all of the different opportunities to optimize. And it's why I've become a fan of PDF optimization tools, because one of the things I know from doing assessments with clients is that very often they lose hours and hours and hours of time dealing with PDFs that had become bloated through the workflow process, and not just into the printing process, but into the archive process. So all of these things you see on the screen, whether you are involved in doing transforms or you do ganging and nesting and you use maybe external programs to do that, whether you take designs in where you don't have access to the fonts, right? That happens all the time. Not all designers are disciplined about embedding the fonts. Resolution mismatches. My favorite is designers who've been trained to design for the web, all of a sudden designing for print. So they put the 72 dpi images in there and wonder why the print doesn't look so great. All of these things can be resolved. And as print professionals, we need to make a point of making sure that we ensure that the file is in the best possible shape at the point where we put it into an archive or we send it to a DFE.
Well, and as a recovering designer, as I might say, so we've got a couple more slides here, and then we'll give you some action items on what you could think about doing and how maybe some of us here at Solimar can help you. But Pat, walk us through those of us who make mistakes as designers. I know Martin has a great book on what designers should and shouldn't do, and just a little shout out there because we're all friendly in the PDF Association. And then, but walk us through these next couple slides, and then we'll share with people what they can do to maybe affect it.
Right. So the first thing I'm going to say to you, if you have not read PDF Forward, that Martin's most recent book from Global Graphics, please do. Actually, I wrote the forward with my friend Bob Leahy. I found the book was really directed to technical people, but every designer should read this book because it highlights all these mistakes that are commonly made. I mean, one of my favorite mistakes is cropping but not trimming, which leaves all the bloat in the file, and we see it all the time. Look, all these things you see on the screen are things you should be paying attention to. Very few designers are trained to understand the efficiency of the print file. They're trained to make it look good. They're creative. They want to use shadows and overlays and drops and transparency. And all of these things have a material impact on the printability of the file and the archivability of the file and the retrievability of the file. So whatever you are doing, taking the easy way isn't a good idea. Making sure that you are taking responsibility for every element that you put into a design and that it is embedded in that design so the design can reliably be moved from platform to platform. All of these things are your responsibility and should be your responsibility. And if you need to know more about them, drop me a note and I will be happy to share more with you. But absolutely read Martin's book. Right? This is, look, PDF creation is a messy thing, and it just is. And the thing is that there's some, I've seen files that were created a little bit in InDesign, a little bit in Corel, a little bit in Quark, all pulled together, and then some transformed pages that used to be AFP. Things that have come through, multiple transforms, a little bit of Extreme, a little bit of Quadient, a little bit of Lightrod just for grins and giggles, and oh, there's a Scriptura piece over here, and it's one file because it's been assembled from so many pieces to create what the client actually needs. Because of that, look, it gets ugly, and the more you can do to optimize it, the better your production environment's going to be.
Yeah, so I think that really speaks to the next slide, right? Or Marion, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to say, it seems like, because we visit lots of shops, Pat, and we talk to the designers, but oftentimes they have no idea where their work is actually going. There's no idea of channel. I've even talked to folks who were using some of our tools to, kind of re-engineer some documents, and they didn't even know what end, printers and presses. So that the challenge is often they have no idea where the channel is going. So again,
that's true. Absolutely. I mean, and think about the traditional agency designer who's been used to designing for offset, right, for years and years and years through the CTP process. All of a sudden, those designs are now being sent out to digital devices of every kind and shape, and also to smartphones and to web pages and to apps. And if they haven't laid the right groundwork in the infrastructure design to handle all those different channels, you wind up with a mess.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, but I mean, so Pat, where are you going to recommend to people as I try to get it to switch here? What's the next thing then? What do you do if
do
you're not
these
sure?
4 things. If you do nothing else in your life, do these 4 things and your life will be way better. Whatever you do, before you hand your design into production, make sure your layers are as flat as they can be. Now, it's a challenge in agency work because sometimes they use the layers to hide different translations, different language translations, different colors by country, right? Different cultural design things. But the flatter the PDF is that you can deliver into your actual production process, the better it is for your bandwidth, for your network bandwidth, as well as for the long time health of the print file. Making sure that you don't deliver into the production process bad fonts, subsetted fonts. I have gotten way too many pieces of actually printed mail where letters were missing, and you knew exactly what happened, and yet it made it all the way through the production process because somebody assumed. Transforms, they're a necessary part of a lot of our lives, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't leave all the excess debris in them. You know, it's a good idea to get all the excess debris out. And at the end of the day, we're all about optimizing the overhead. Remember that your bandwidth actually costs you money. Your archiving storage, whether it's in the cloud or on-prem, it costs you money. So don't be, archiving bloated files, don't be transmitting bloated files. Get them as optimized as you can, as fast as you can. It is the safest thing for you to do for your print environment.
Well, and I think I would just add to that, what we see is that people may think they already have done that, but technology keeps changing. So don't be afraid to try some new things. And I guess that's where we kind of lead in, right, Marianne, to why Solimar cares, why we're part of PDF Association, why we wanted to give this presentation and bring an industry expert in to talk about some of what's happened around PDF and why it's so impactful. So I'm going to hand it off here to you, Marianne, and give the audience a little insight into Solimar and why we care, why this is so critical to us as a provider in the space.
Sure, yeah, because we're PDF experts, and we have been really since the inception of PDF. We've known Pat many years. You've known Drew, of course, our president, who's been on the PDF Standards Committee, has written parts of it on the finishing and such. So we are all about optimizing PDF from virtually any kind of workflow or any kind of data stream that's coming in. And so for the transactional site, we do things like white paper factories. We help people go from those physical inserts into a nice digital white paper in, color comes out, and it's all nice and managed. We do a lot with security, so securing PDF information, and when you transmit it, when you view it, when you see it, who has access to it and where did it go? So that's really important as well. JDF is kind of about communications, so if we actually want to keep track of what's touching our files and our data. And so what's special about Solimar is that, again, we're a 30-year company as of in a few months here. And again, focused on PDF, but we're really an engineering-backed company. So we're on the AFP standards as well. So if you've heard of that, that's kind of an older mainframe kind of application. Still lots of customers use this and will continue to use this for a long period of time. We talk to the CIP4, MTAC, or the USPS, are always trying to optimize mail as well. And then we do this by keeping close to our customer base. We have 30 customers, 30 companies that are members of our advisory council. So they teach us how they use our software, and then we keep improving it on and on. So really, we try to make this a nice community, and we love being part of the PDFA Association as well. It's very beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always so impressed, Marianne, because Solimar's started in '91, PDF in '93. It's kind of an interesting, evolution, as we keep saying, or adaptation even. So what we have to offer, right, is our chemistry platform, and we talk about that because it's the chemistry of engagements like this, and knowing people like Pat and our customer advisory council and all of our partners around the world. But we have a bridge solution here under the chemistry umbrella. So we have things for make ready, we can enrich and transform, we can print, manage, and drive printers of all types and varieties. We can give you visibility into your workplace, into your production environments. And we can do that, which is really important given the remote working capabilities people are needing right now. So we can do that with very little services, very little professional services. And we can give you tracking, reporting, and even an archive and portal e-delivery platform, all under this umbrella in a modular fashion. But I'm not going to belabor that because we don't have a lot more time today. I think there's some more important things we want to talk about. But Marianne, give people a little bit of insight here into our ability to fix a little thing or a big thing.
Right. So as Jonathan was saying, we're kind of our portfolio. I like to say that we have tactical to strategic solutions. So we can very, very easily and quickly go in and fix a PDF problem. And you're going to see some that in just a second here of ones we can easily fix: fonts, images, layers, the debris Pat's been speaking about. Luckily, we can fix a lot of that in those files. But then we can also do, as Jonathan was saying, other types of applications like give you visibility into your platform right now or into your factory. What jobs are coming in, what jobs are in process, what jobs are having problems, what presses might be having a problem, and then what got out today. So again, nice visibility, and then really giving the information as to what's going on, optimizing files as well. So again, tactical to strategic, and love to talk to you about any and all of those if this is interesting to you.
Right. And I think this really goes into how we wrote this back to the solution really that we're talking about in the session topic, is that we really think optimized PDF is needed. We're seeing it in a lot of our work with customers. We have a new solution called Ready PDF that we would love for you to try, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But the reason is we're seeing people save money, print faster, and really be able to do more, open the door to more opportunities, even in challenging market times, right? And especially with the ability to work remotely, you can pair all this together to see some amazing optimizations, not only in PDF, but in other parts of your entire production workflow in your organization. It could be digital, it could be print, it could be both, right, Marianne? So I think what's really important is what we did to prove this. So do you want to talk a little bit about that and maybe our award?
Sure, and Pat can chime in as well, since you were instrumental in helping us with this. So we asked Keypoint to test Ready PDF. So this is our PDF cleansing and optimization. It's really an industrial solution. So complements lots of solutions that are out there today. We're not really worried about fixing kernings of fonts and such. We're actually fixing the actual structure inside that file and making it better. So Keypoint in their UK lab tested our software on some real applications. And the two that they gave us back initially, one was a catalog that became 14 times smaller, and one was a transpromo that became 7 times smaller. And so the catalog, Pat, was interesting because catalogs, right, come from lots and lots of different sources. So it might have been a billboard at one point that an image came in, and I am a major clipper where I steal lots of things and glue them in. And so the problem is catalogs become easily bloated. And so that was the catalog issue. And then on the trans promo, I believe it was a lot of fonts and images that were the big challenge there.
And different resolution images. The catalog actually began its life as a true office supply catalog for a European company, and it was a classic catalog. As you said, there were full-page rasters. There were files that had been created in InDesign. There were pages that had been created in Word. There were pages that had been sort of glued together, in Photoshop with, different raster images. Yeah. There were all sorts of things in there. And one of the reasons that I fell in love with that file is because it was originally designed to be printed offset, where the big goal was to get it onto a CTP and onto a plate, so it didn't really matter what the genesis was. But the client had decided that they wanted to go shorter run. They were interested in going onto a new digital platform, and all of a sudden, all that bloat did make a difference. So it was a curiosity originally to see if it was possible to get it smaller, to get it more appropriate, and to solve a lot of the problems. The Keypoint Intelligence UK Lab is in Wokingham in the UK, and they actually work with their clients around the world. And it was Satori, really. It was a true synergy. They really needed to be able to test some equipment, and they didn't have a good way to do comparisons of what the equipment was good at, and the ability to provide both a file that was messy, right, and one that was truly optimized, and to see what difference that made on the equipment that they were testing. It was just a marriage made in heaven, and so I was delighted to make that marriage.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
we were delighted to have the award, right, Marianne? So I know we're running short on time, and we do want to take questions. So do you want to step through these next couple examples real quick for us?
Sure, and then also this is also a handout as well. So if you want to download this now or anytime, these are all available and they'll probably be on their website as well. So we grabbed 3 different samples. We test hundreds of files. So like we always say, no 2 PDFs are created equal. And so we get in lots and lots of test files. Some of these were also from the Keypoint results. This particular one, very small file for a transactional application. It was only over 4,000 pages, but clutching the printer. So run it through Ready PDF and we found images were not cached, lots of font issues, and even some cross-references. So this first one, became almost 10 times smaller. So, think about that if you can fix these files before they enter your factory. Better to fix them ahead of time. This next file, this was a campaign application, about 10,000 pages. Again, resources not cached, subsetted fonts, so the dropout that Pat was speaking of, various document overhead, which could sometimes mean just extraneous debris, as Pat was just mentioning. So again, almost a little over 2.5 times smaller, right from the beginning, right when we did the initial test on the file. And then the third one, I think, was the next file had a lot of X objects. And so, yes, so a lot of times designers put X objects in, even as placeholders, but if they're empty, we try to process them as the DFE. We're looking for something to do, and it just causes this weight and this bloat. And so by pulling those out, this was kind of a silly, almost, 350 times smaller of the file size, just from those extraneous information. So these are just a few examples of some of our testing that we've done that we thought you'd find interesting.
And so, Marianne, as we wrap up here, Pat, as I remember, it's PDF Forward by Martin Bailey. I saw a question come up. People hadn't heard of the book or wanted to know what it was. I think that's right. PDF Forward, is that right?
Yeah, and if you will give me just a second, I'll grab the link to it and I'll put it in the chat window.
Perfect. Well, so that is a good segue into you guys. Please ask us questions. We have a few more minutes here. We did get a little bit of a later start with the video queuing up and everything, so we want to make sure we grab your questions. So put them in the window here. You can see I am watching. Just know that we have these 8 ways to evolve PDF. In the handout, you'll see the benefits that are different from other things that are on the market today. We're not going to belabor this, but I do want to leave you, as you think about the questions you might want to ask, since we have a few more minutes here, with this offer to try it out. We want you to try it out, and Marianne's very vocal about this. So come talk to us if this sounds interesting, right, Marianne? And we'd be happy to talk to you about it.
So we'll test files, really any kind of files, not just PDFs. We get plenty of AFP, IPDS, PCL of late, quite a bit of that. I thought that was interesting, Pat. Even VIPP. So really whatever you have, or if you're looking to move files, or you're looking to outsource files to someone else, we can take that data and actually optimize it for the new devices or the new location where you want it to go. And then we're also happy to set up a free evaluation system, really, of any of our products. So you can put it in your own site, test your own files, and see how it works for you. Which is
let me grab a couple questions here. Justin, thank you so much for putting it. The correct title is Full Speed Ahead.
Full Speed Ahead.
And thank you for the link.
I was remembering the draft title. So
yes, and so thank you, Justin. We just want to make sure people get to read that. And then the U.S. agency that adopted UA is our Library of Congress. So every book and title that gets an ISBN number is going to be UA, so that people can read it hopefully now until forever, and with assistive technology. So, and honestly, I think we're coming right to the time. And if you have more questions,
poll to run. We were just going to have.
Oh yes, that was the last question I wanted you guys to answer. I apologize. I should have put that up. Technology being it. Just answer us this poll if you would before you head out. And we're going to put up our last slide where you can always find our information. It's in the handout as well. And in this TED style, we hope you found this, 30 minutes or so helpful. And we really appreciate you joining OctoberPDFest with the PDF Association.